GoForThe2.com in with the week 4 predictions. Before I get into the predictions for this coming Friday and Saturday, this coming Saturday, live from the Sports Grid studio at the FanDuel Sportsbook in the Meadowlands. Check us out, College Football Today, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. I'll break down all the top 25 battles, give you my best bets that are on this video, along with some of the under-the-radar games that I'll be looking at as the week progresses. You can stream it live on sportsgrid.com, or go to Xumo, XUMO TV, channel 719, College Football Today, live from the FanDuel Sportsbook at the Meadowlands, sportsgrid.com. Check us out. Let's get right into the battles. This coming Friday, 2 games on tap, one in the ACC and one in the Big Ten, really have me interested. Let's start with that ACC battle between Virginia Tech and Duke. Virginia Tech has won 3 straight over the Blue Devils by an average margin of victory of 13.6 points per game. Picked up this victory last year on the road, 31-14. Now they come back home, both teams coming out of a bye week. You have a team in Virginia Tech that has really played down to the competition. They beat Furman and Old Dominion by 7 points apiece, and now having a conference game at home in Blacksburg, you think this team will be into this ball game. You have their quarterback, Ryan Willis, that's completing 64% of his passes, over 700 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But on the flip side, you have a Virginia Tech defense that's giving up 174 rushing yards per game. That was the concern last year for Bud Foster. He had one of his worst defensive efforts in terms of run support. That unit last year allowed 211 rushing yards per game, but more importantly, 5.6 yards per carry. You have a Virginia Tech team that's averaging 26 points per game, giving up 24 points per game to opposing offenses this year, and does have Miami on deck in week number 5. Is there a possible look ahead in this ball game? There might be. When you look at the flip side in Duke, this is a team that's averaging 29 points per game and holding opposing offenses to only 25 points per game in entering this week 4 battle. You have a quarterback in Quentin Harris that's completing 73% of his passes, 629 yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But this is a front 7 in Duke that's playing very well through 3 ball games. Duke is only allowing 140 rushing yards to opposing offenses, and in all 3 games has held the opponent to under 150 yards in that ball game. So I think that'll factor into this matchup. I think Duke is able to force Ryan Willis into long third downs, and they'll get opportunities to score points. One of those matchups as well was the Alabama Crimson Tide. Duke held Alabama week number 1 to only 145 rushing yards in that battle. They were able to force Tua into long third downs, and I thought they were very physical at the point of attack. That's what I like heading into this matchup. You have a coach in David Cutcliffe that has coached up the talent. The kids buy in, the kids respond, and you're on the flip side, you have a team in Justin Fuente that really has lost that team, in my opinion. I know both teams are coming out of a bye week. Virginia Tech's at home. I don't care. Duke strikes the upset 31-24 in Blacksburg this coming Friday night. The other big battle is Penn State on the road against Maryland. Penn State has won 4 straight over the Terps by an average margin of victory of 30.7 points per game. They picked up this win last year in Happy Valley, 38-3. Last year, 2 years ago, they got the victory 66-3. Now, when you look at this matchup 4 years ago, it's interesting because Mike Locksley was the interim head coach for the Terps in College Park that day. He almost led the team to an upset win over James Franklin. Penn State escaped with a 31-30 victory on the road in College Park that year in 2015. That's the matchup to see play out in this ballgame. Locksley has coached this offense up. This offense is rushing for 277 on the ground, passing for 260 through the air, and the defense is only giving up 73 rushing yards heading into this ballgame. On the flip side, you have a team in Penn State that's averaging 192 rushing yards per game, passing for over 230 with Sean Clifford at the helm, and defensively only allowing 70 rushing yards to opposing offenses. For me, it comes down to physicality. I think Penn State's the more physical team on the offensive and defensive lines. I think they're getting better quarterback play out of Sean Clifford. He's completed 58% of his passes, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. On the flip side, you have a quarterback for Virginia Tech and Josh Jackson that has been very inconsistent, completing 51% of his passes. He's turned the football over in recent weeks, and I think that's, for me, is the difference and the matchup to watch play out in College Park. Penn State has traditionally not been a solid road team. They play much better at home than they do on the road, but I think they're the more physical team at the point of attack. Maryland, in my opinion, is still a finesse offense and defense. I like Penn State to win this ball game by 14 points on the road in College Park this coming Friday night. Saturday's ball game starts for me at 3:30. I'm going with Virginia over Notre Dame. Virginia, I said they would struggle against Old Dominion. I thought it was a sandwich spot. 2 weeks ago, they knocked off Florida State. This week, they had Notre Dame. I expected them to come out flat, and they did. They trailed that matchup 17-0 at home before rallying to win that ball game by 11 points. On the flip side, you have a Notre Dame team that went on the road and pushed the Georgia Bulldogs to the limit, lost that matchup 23-17. Notre Dame played very well. They held Georgia to only 152 rushing yards on the ground. Georgia entering that ballgame was rushing for over 200 through the first 3 weeks of the season. You look at Notre Dame's offense in that ballgame, they only rushed for 46 yards on the ground, and they're going to be facing another blue-collar, disciplined defense in Virginia at home in South Bend this coming Saturday. When you look at Virginia, holding opposing offenses under 100 yards rushing and holding opposing offenses to only 177 passing yards per game. They have an athletic quarterback in Bryce Perkins that's completing 64% of his passes. He's thrown for over 800 yards. He's got 6 touchdowns and 4 interceptions on the year, but he's an athletic quarterback that can put pressure on Notre Dame's defense on the perimeter. When you look at Notre Dame as well, they're going to need to challenge that Virginia defense over the top. Virginia's secondary can play man-to-man coverage, which will allow Bronco Mendenhall to utilize blitz packages to blitz Ian Book off the edge, and that's where he struggled this year. When he gets pressure from the outside, Book has not been a consistent passer. Look for the same type of game plan to play out in South Bend this coming Saturday. I think Virginia's a live dog in this battle. I think they're able to run the football on Notre Dame. I think the emotional letdown of the Georgia loss will factor into this ballgame, and Virginia strikes the upset on the road, 35-30 over Brian Kelly and the crew this coming Saturday afternoon. Another big ball game takes place at night in the desert. It's Arizona at home against UCLA. What can you say about UCLA, baby? Down 49-17. They forced 6 turnovers to come from behind to win that ball game 67-63. They've won 4 of the last 5 over Arizona by an average margin of victory of 14.5 points per game, and picked up this victory last year in the Rose Bowl by a score of 31-30. But I have some concerns about UCLA heading into this ball game. Let's look at the good for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He threw for 507 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. But when you look at UCLA's offense, only converting 3 of 11 on third downs against Washington State's defense. That's a cause of concern heading into this matchup against Arizona. UCLA third down offense only converting 32% of the time. They're going up against a very run-heavy offense in Arizona that's averaging 307 yards per game and has 2 big play running backs in Brightwell and J.J. Taylor. Brightwell averaging 8.9 yards per carry. J.J. Taylor averaging 5.9 yards per carry, and you toss in the athleticism of Khalil Tate, who's leading the team with 3 rushing touchdowns. This is a lethal offense for Arizona. It's back-to-back road games for UCLA, and Arizona is converting 58% of their third down opportunities. The Wildcats are coming out of a bye week. the extra week of preparation, I think will benefit this team. And if you watch that matchup 2 weeks ago against Texas Tech, I really like what Mazzoni's done with that rushing offense. He seems to be getting into a rhythm. I think he'll have a great game plan in place, and they're going to force UCLA to stop the run on each and every down. UCLA still allowing 178 rushing yards per game. They gave up 150 to Washington State and their running back Borghi in that battle. Washington State was only averaging 92 rushing yards per game because they're a pass-heavy offense that entered that battle averaging 476 passing yards against opposing defenses. So this is a more physical offensive line in Arizona. They're going to force UCLA to stop the run, and I don't think they can do it. That'll keep Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Joshua Kelly on the sidelines. And more importantly, you look at Arizona only allowing 114 rushing yards to opposing offenses on the ground. Defensively, they're giving up 373 passing yards per game. But before that Texas Tech game, they were giving up 404 passing yards per game. You look at the last 3 games in terms of secondary play. Week 1 for Arizona against Hawaii, they allowed 436 passing yards to Hawaii. Week number 2 against Northern Arizona, they allowed 373 passing yards. Week number 4 against Texas Tech, they only allowed and held Alan Bowman and the crew to 307 passing yards in that 14-point win. They're +5 in turnover margin. I think it continues this weekend. Arizona gets a 14-point victory over the Bruins this coming Saturday. Don't like back-to-back road games for UCLA. I'm still not buying into Chip Kelly and the crew at this point in the season. Kevin Sumlin and Arizona moved to 3-1 on the year. It's their first conference game as well. I think they'll be into this matchup in the desert Saturday night. I like 3 big underdogs this weekend. 2 of them take place at 12 o'clock. One of them is Texas Tech over Oklahoma. Oklahoma has won 7 straight over the Red Raiders by an average margin of victory of 17 points per game. Picked up this victory last year, 51-46. But you look at Oklahoma in terms of their Big 12 opponents last year. They were 9-1 in conference play and won those 9 games by an average margin of victory of 18.6 points per game. You have quarterback for Texas Tech, Alan Bowman. He's out of this battle, but to me it doesn't matter. Oklahoma is averaging over 670 yards of total offense. Heisman Trophy winner Jalen Hurts is playing lights out, but this is a defensive-minded head coach in Matt Wells. Defensively, Texas Tech has played much better. They're only allowing 159 rushing yards heading into this ball game. I think they can force third down and long situations against Jalen Hurts, and more importantly, Jet Duffy most likely will get the start at quarterback. Duffy is an athletic quarterback. He got the victory last year on the road in Fort Worth against TCU. He brings an added dimension that Oklahoma's defense cannot really game plan for it. Oklahoma's playing very well defensively, giving up 149 rushing yards per game, 212 passing yards allowed against opposing quarterbacks. But Jet Duffy is the X factor in this ball game. I think he keeps this game close. In the end, Oklahoma wins, but they get a high-scoring 47-40 win over the Red Raiders, and Texas Tech pushes them to the limit in Norman Saturday afternoon. The other big ball game for me is Arkansas in Arlington against Texas A&M. Texas A&M has won 10 straight over Arkansas in this battle. Got this victory last year by 7 points. The last 6 games have been decided by 10.1 points per game. You have a Texas A&M crew that lost 28-20 to Auburn last week. I thought they would step up. They did not do that. They allowed Bo Nix and that offense to strike first, which allowed them to dictate the tempo and slow that game down, which kept Kellen Mond on the sidelines. Now you have a team in Arkansas that lost to San Jose State. They paid San Jose State $1.5 million and lost that matchup 31-24. Their quarterback, Nick Starkel, threw 5 interceptions. He blamed it on Justin Bieber and his T-shirt, but he's facing his former team in Texas A&M, and for me, I think you're going to get Arkansas's best effort this coming Saturday on a neutral field. You have an Arkansas defense only allowing 159 yards per game I expect Morris to have a solid game plan in place. He needs this victory to get this team back on track. On the flip side, I look at Texas A&M. They clearly are the better team, but they've had a rough 3 weeks. They played Clemson 3 weeks ago in Death Valley, lost that matchup by 14 points. Now they faced Auburn, another physical team at the point of attack, dropped that matchup at home by 8 points. Now have to go on the road to face an arch rival from the days of the Southwest Conference. That's asking a lot out of this team to respond in a big way. They can be a tired group. Both teams are sitting at 2-2. Texas A&M wins, but I think Arkansas is in this game from start to finish. 38-31. Texas A&M gets the 7-point win over the Razorbacks this coming Saturday. The big one for me is Ohio State and Nebraska. Ohio State hitting on all cylinders, averaging 60 points plus per game and holding opposing offenses to 9 points per game. They've won 3 straight over Nebraska by an average margin of victory of 35.3 points per game, and did pick up this win last year in Columbus, 36-31. When you look at Justin Fields overall, what can you say? The kid's playing lights out, completing 69% of his passes, 13 touchdowns, no interceptions, and goes on the road to face Adrian Martinez and Nebraska that almost got upset last week as a 13-point favorite against Lovie Smith in Illinois. They fell behind by 14 points. Martinez led the comeback for Nebraska to win that ball game 42-38. They now come back home to Memorial Stadium. This place is going to be sold out. There's going to be red everywhere. This is why Nebraska hired Scott Frost. You know the way Michigan hired Jim Harbaugh to win a big game and he couldn't live up to expectations last week against Wisconsin? This is why the Cornhuskers hired Scott Frost, particularly for a game like this. When you look at Nebraska as a whole, they're playing much better in run support. That was the Achilles heel for the Cornhuskers last year. They allowed 195 rushing yards per game. They've got it down to 116 yards against opposing offenses, which is huge against Justin Fields and this Ohio State offense. When you look at Nebraska as a balanced offense, they're rushing for 214 on the ground, passing for over 270 through the air with Martinez, who's completing over 60% of his passes. Look for Scott Frost to have his team in this ballgame from start to finish. He had a solid game plan in place last year, losing that matchup 36-31, and I think the Cornhuskers are in striking distance every step of the way. They pull out all the stops. In the end, Ohio State wins, but it is very close. Ohio State 34, Nebraska 31. Upset city if Nebraska does it. I don't think they can. Ohio State gets the 3-point win, but I'm going with 3 big dogs this coming Saturday. Stay with me each and every week. Tune in this Saturday live from the Sports Grid studio at the FanDuel Sportsbook at the Meadowlands. College football today. I'll be with you each and every week. Stay tuned. College football is great. I just love talking about it.